Welcome to FreedomCast, a podcast dedicated to interviewing star icons and entrepreneurs who have encouraged others to become more healthy and active. My name is Ashton, and it's my pleasure to host you as we take another trip through the fitness industry. It's entertaining and informative, and I hope it makes fitness more exciting and special to you in your own fitness journey. FreedomCast is supported by Freedom Fitness Equipment in Charlotte, North Carolina. Freedom Fitness Equipment serves the health and fitness community nationwide, from free weights and strength equipment for home gyms and studios to cardio and conditioning equipment for commercial spaces. Check them out at freedomfitnessequipment.com. Let's get rolling with today's show. All right, we're here with Rob from Brutal Iron in where in South Carolina now?
Rock Hill.
It's in Rock Hill.
Yes, just below Charlotte, about 10-15 minutes south of Charlotte.
Awesome. I was just talking with Justin from Strength Empire. He recommended I come and swing by and say hey.
Yes,
and,
thank you, Justin.
Yeah. This guy's got an awesome gym. We're going to post the gym tour here, just the equipment and everything that he's got. But he's got a great setup. And I just wanted to talk to you about the business and how the gym got started, but also your background and the kinds of training and things that you've done and membership and all that stuff. But yeah, can you give me a little bit of background just about you and the gym?
Yes. So I started the gym in 2011, actually. It was February 14th. It was actually like Valentine's Day gift to myself. It just worked out that way. I had my undergrad was in health and phys ed. So I went through the teaching process, got teaching certification, and realized I loved the teaching part. I loved the kids, but I didn't like all the paperwork and all the extra crap. So it was something where I had actually started personal training before college as like a senior in high school. And so I was always personal training like during college. And I was like, I kind of like that better than I would like teaching. But where we grew up was the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, so being a personal trainer wasn't like a career for what we knew about it. Yep. So I did the teaching certification, decided I wasn't quite sure if that's what I wanted to do. So I decided to do a master's, and I wanted to do a master's in nutrition. Nice. So I had been learning more about food on my own and training clients. So I wanted to learn kind of the more science of it so I could do a better job with myself and with clients. So I actually was looking at different places, and my mom gave me a 500-mile radius as a rule. I couldn't move further from home than 500 miles. So I had college in Florida that offered like a graduate assistantship, and then Winthrop University here in Rock Hill. And from our driveway at home in Pennsylvania to my apartment, I ended up getting was 500.1 miles. So right on the dot. So I got away with the 0.1. So I moved down and I started grad school. And throughout grad school, the program for the Masters in Nutrition really sets you up to kind of work in a hospital or work in like public schools. It was more so like nutrition for like health. Interesting. And there was actually 0 classes about nutrition for aesthetics, like how you would eat to change the way you look. And then there was only one 3-credit class in the entire process about sports or like performance nutrition. Yes, so I was very bummed because that's actually I wanted to know about the health stuff because I don't want to kill people. Right. But I was really excited to learn more about aesthetic nutrition and performance nutrition. But it really wasn't part of the program. So I went through and I got to the point where you would then go to your internship to do registered dietitian. And I actually had 2 of my professors as clients at the time because I knew a lot about aesthetic nutrition and performance, but they knew as much as they could know about health because they were teachers. They knew everything about health, but they didn't know how to look a certain way based on how they ate. So I started working with them, and they had advised me actually to not do the registered dietitian program because it would then allow me to give kind of freedom of giving advice, in the sense to where the way they presented to me was if I became a registered dietitian, if I gave advice that was counter to like the government recommendations, I would have potential being risk to be sued. So it was interesting in the sense, and plus it was like a 9-month internship that you had to pay for all the credits yourself. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so expensive. I can't work the whole time because it was a 40-hour a week plus, and then you actually weren't allowed to work. So there's a whole bunch of logistics behind it. And I was like, you know what, I'll open my own gym because I'd been talking to gyms by the end of my graduate degree and talking about being like a personal training director. And a lot of them wanted a higher percentage of money than what I wanted to give up if I was going to do all the work. Yep. So they had a room with equipment, and then they were going to take 60% of my money to bring in like all the clientele to bring in stuff. And I was like, for 60%, I can just make my own room full of equipment. So I decided to open my own gym.
Nice.
So I graduated in December of 2010. And I remember on Thanksgiving break, so a month before I graduated, I went home and told my parents, I was like, I think I'm going to open a gym. And they're like, okay. And they're awesomely supportive. So I then came back, took my finals, and I signed the paperwork for the lease here and did all this stuff and started it by February.
Nice.
So yeah, so I decided to open a gym and then started it in 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did it complete backwards as to what I would tell anyone to do.
Yeah.
Because before I opened, I never read a business book at all.
Wow.
So then once I opened, I started reading more about business because I want to be better. And one of the books I read was E-Myth Revisited.
Yes.
Yes. And it was an awesome book.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious because that book essentially told me I should not have opened a business. Because I was like a technician. I loved doing the work.
Yeah.
But my least favorite part of owning a business is the financial stuff, all the other crap you have to do other than being a personal trainer and talking to people.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm glad I read my business books afterwards.
Yep.
And we're actually been in business now for over 10 years.
Nice.
So I'm glad I did it. It's just funny, though, knowing that if I would have looked too much into it, I probably wouldn't have done it. Yeah. So, yes. So that's my undergrad is in health and phys ed. My graduate degree is in human nutrition.
Okay.
I have a personal training certification through ACSM, which I got back, I think, when I was 20 or 21 years old. At the time, I just Googled best personal training certification. ACSM came up, so I did it. And then I recently got a corrective exercise specialist degree through NASM. And that was just, this is going to sound bad, but it was for just interest. I wanted to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
So I took the test. I paid to take the test, just took the test and passed it, and then got it on like a weekend because I'd already known enough. I'd been doing it enough. So I was very lucky that I didn't have to buy the book and take on courses and stuff.
Wow.
I knew enough of the information to pass it, so that was cool. So yes.
That's amazing.
So that's the formal educational part.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. How has the gym grown from? Is this been the only location that you've ever had, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was interesting that this is a large enough space that I could go in debt just enough to recover. So thankfully we're debt free now.
Awesome.
But at first I had to take out a loan to get the equipment and whatnot. And this was about the size I felt I could train my clients, but also my clients could come back in between our sessions and work out. Okay. So I'd worked out at other gyms and trained out of other gyms, and you'd see clients, they'd come in for their 1 or 2 sessions a week and then never work out in between. And it's, of course, not going to get great results. So I wanted to provide a place that they could come back and do workouts on the equipment I was teaching them in the environment that I could control. So it worked out well with this size. I looked at a couple other locations, and this was the one that was on the edge of what I thought I could afford.
Okay.
So we started out here. It's 3,500 square feet if you count the offices.
Okay.
And then I got very lucky as out front, there's a canopy that runs the entire front of the building.
Yep.
So we have it's roughly, if I had to take a guess, I think it's about like 10 feet wide, but it's like 100 feet long. That's all covered in canopy. So we use that to do like yoke carries, like yoke walks, farmers carries. So it gave me a bunch of extra actual space because even if it's raining, it's covered and it's dry. So I got kind of free space in that way, and it's written into like my contract that I'm allowed to use it. Okay. So yay. Yeah. But yeah, so we started it, and then within the first year, I realized that I really liked the training part, not so much the businessy stuff. So whenever I had opportunities to expand, and but people would talk about that, I'd usually say no because it would turn into more of what I didn't like and less of what I did like. So the bigger the business, the more you have to do the behind the scenes work. And I liked the training. I liked working with people, so I didn't want to add more space.
Gotcha. This is a pretty incredible gym. When we were walking through doing that tour, you were showing me a couple of pieces that your dad has actually welded. Can you talk a little bit about his background and the kind of stuff that you guys have done? Yeah,
so he used to work, his father owned a coal mining business, and in order to just save money, they all learned how to fix the equipment themselves. So if something broke and it was metal, they would learn to weld it. And so he had a welding background. I think he's learned how to weld when he was like 14. So he's been welding his entire life. It's been, after he was doing the coal mining, he went and did a different job, but had excavating landscaping as a second job, and that still involved machinery and still having to weld things or change things. So he'd modify things on his backhoe or bulldozer on his own. So whenever I got into the gym, there became, like I told you about, the one need we had was a belt squat. I had a client who had limitations with what pressure could be put on their spine. So we had limitations using a leg press, like even a leg extension, hack squat. So we really had trouble finding ways for them to train their legs more than just, a dumbbell goblet squat. So there's eventually going to be a maximal load for that. So I asked him and I said, hey, there's these things called belt squats. I can't afford a brand new one. Do you think we can make one? So he actually said yes, of course. And so we went ahead and made one. And at the time, we made the only one that had a weighted pull-up option, weighted dip option. It had a bench that was already on the machine, and it was adjustable. It has band peg apparatus. It has multiple settings for where it can be racked. So some of the various options out there, they only have 2 settings, and it's if you're a tall person, you have to do half of a squat to rack it, or if you're a short person, you have to do like a calf raise to get it to rack. So ours has like 12 different heights you can rack the weight at, so that way it's a little bit easier to rack and unrack for people. So that was one of the things we made. We made our own bench press. So we have to the best of my knowledge, the only standalone reverse band bench press. So it's the only one that can be loaded with bands from the top. So we went ahead and made that, and it has like a auto spotter for you, so you can actually pull the bar out over top of you. It kicks out over top of you. Oh, yeah. Then when you pick up, it'll fall away. Heck yeah. So that's pretty cool. We made a couple other like inventions and things. So like I have a clip on our Concept 2 rower that changes out the clip, the kind of the way in which it connects to the handle, to where we have it now. You can connect any handle you want to our Concept rower. So I'll actually use jump loops like from Spud Inc. And we do a lot of face pulls for people. Oh, wow. We do a lot of thoracic work on our rower. So we'll actually have them put their feet on the ground, just use the sliding seat, and then use different pathways. So we even do like rotational movements off that. So it's been very fun to use the place to kind of research and experiment. And with my dad, we can then just make anything I want. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What's been your favorite part about owning the gym?
It's definitely been the people and the connections and stories, and then very selfish reason, I can work out anytime I want on the equipment that I want. So it's very nice. So very personally, nice benefit there. But it's really been, and it's so cliche, but it's true. You get to meet a lot of awesome people. You get to help a lot of people. So the stories of changes you can make in people's lives is by far like what'll keep you going through the tough times of trying to make things work whenever it's not so easy to make them work. So yes, like in the first couple years, I remember like I had one morning I woke up and my bank account was minus $400. And it was like, okay, well, that's lovely. So you go through the whole day trying to like figure out a way to make up $400. And at the time I was still trying to develop the culture of the gym, and I'm trying my best to make sure that who we have is all good people. Okay, so I know everybody's first name. No one's going to come in here screaming, curse words. No one, like I've kicked people out for like, if they were trying to like hit on a girl in an inappropriate way, I'm like, this is it's somebody's mother, somebody's sister, so like they're a human being. Don't do that. So we'd kick them out. And I remember on that day, I actually kicked out 2 people and just said no to their money, because I remember telling my parents I would rather go out of business doing it the right way than stay in business doing it the wrong way. Because I wouldn't want to wake up and come to the place if I didn't feel, like it was the right place. So that was something I got very lucky with, in the sense that even though I kicked them out, I had a client who owed me some money, and they paid me on that day, and it covered it. So everything's been, the first couple of years were definitely rocky. I was training 50 hours in person a week. And then I was writing their nutrition and training plans for free. I was training $20 an hour just to get people through the door. And it included nutrition and training plans for free.
What a steal.
So, and it was all individualized. So I'd actually write their own nutrition plan, their own training plan for them. And so it was 50 hours in person a week. And then plus all that, plus cleaning the place, it was overwhelming for sure. But got through it for the first couple of years, and it's all worked out since. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. What's the clientele like now? So is the gym geared towards powerlifting or strongman or just general weightlifting or anything like that?
It's funny in a sense that when I first opened it, I was like, well, I'll buy a little bit of everything, and then I'll see who comes. Yeah. So I bought a couple, like we have a strongman stuff. So we have a full stone set that my parents and I made from stone molds ourselves. Oh, wow. We built the platforms ourselves and everything. And there was a couple mistakes that were made. That was funny stories. So we have a bunch of strongman stuff, enough that people would be able to compete in. Yeah. We have all the specialty powerlifting stuff that you would need, and we have plenty enough for bodybuilding. So my thought was, whoever comes, I'll buy more. Well, of course, everybody came in equal amounts, and I just had to continue to buy everything. So, yes. So I was like, crap. But so over the years, we've been trying to expand blended. And we do have people who they're just learning what a barbell and a dumbbell are.
Nice.
So like what the difference of that is. And then we have people who've had like actually like world records and people who are pro cards and what they do. And yeah, so it's kind of awesome in the sense that we have such a big blend of people. And I really love that because I can't cover everything. We're a 24-hour facility. I can't be here all the time. So to know that we have members who are well experienced, well educated, and they're awesome people, so they're going to help out and give advice to the other people. So it's really cool kind of community feel. People tend to like find their niche. Like if they come at 5 p.m. at night, they'll have a couple other people who always come at that time. They'll kind of work together. So it's nice that you find people like creating friendships in like small little groups. So when I first opened, everybody came because they knew me. So therefore I had to be the communicator of everything, and everything like revolved around me. And I very quickly realized that was going to create a limitation for the business. So I was lucky that I got a couple personal trainers to come in and help me out. So because I had 50 hours a week, I couldn't train any more people. So when people kept coming, I kept asking like people who I knew were good people. So when the first couple of people who trained for me, I told them I know how to make you a good trainer. So I taught at Winthrop. One of the things I taught was weight training, and I've been teaching like my whole life. So I was like, I can make you a good trainer. I can't make you a good person. So if you're a good person, I can use that to then make you a good trainer.
There we go.
Because we have had experiences where, somebody came in with a good background, but they weren't a good person. And it was kind of a pain in the butt, and eventually like cleared that out. But as good people came in, became good trainers, that helped spread things out more than just me being the center of everything.
Gotcha. What is so... Oh, can you talk a little bit about how the issues you had with making those stones you mentioned?
Oh, okay. Yes. So we got stone molds from Slater Stones. And they were basically just like half of a plastic circle and another half, and then you're like duct tape them together. You pour cement inside, and then it's supposed to solidify and make a stone.
Sounds like a pain in the ass.
So yes. So one of the moments was I tried to make one myself. I didn't get the right mixture of anything, and it settled with a big flat spot on the bottom. So when I took that out, we now use that, and we flip it over and lay it on the flat side, and that's our anchor for our battle ropes. So I can just roll that around, and then no matter how hard somebody pulls, that stone's 300 and some pounds, so they're not going to move that. So it's a nice, awesome kind of mobile station now for our jump rope, and then battle ropes. And then when we first made the platforms, I had talked to some other people on stones, and I was like, well, what do you need to put under the stone to protect the floor? So they said, 2 horse stall mats will do. So, of course, I used that, put the stone up, roll the stone off, it hits, and it just doesn't bounce. It just kind of hits. And I was like, oh, no. I cracked the floor. So we had to, cut up the carpet. We had to put in like all new cement, reinforce the area, put the carpet back down. So then we made the big platform that we have now of like, I don't even know how long those boards are. I think they're like 10 foot long. So it's like 10 by 10 platform, and it's a layer of like 2x10s, like flat, another layer, then like plywood, then another layer, then rubber mats. So that way we definitely would not break the floor again.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So it was interesting in learning. Now this was me being stubborn and trying to do it myself before I asked my dad. So my dad, he is the typical like dad where he knows everything about everything.
Of course.
So I try to do stuff on my own, and then I'll come back to him and be like, Dad, I screwed up. Can you please fix it? So he came back and like showed me how to do it and everything, and then we ended up making the molds. So we have stones from 135 all the way up to 445.
Wow.
So pretty big range. We actually had a couple professional strongmen who would come in. They've lifted the 445.
Oh, wow.
So one guy, his name's Adam Schur. He's on TV now, like WWE wrestling under name Braun Strowman, I think is his name on WWE. But he used to come and train with another guy named David Hansen, and they would throw around that 445 like it was nothing. So we had kicked around the idea of making maybe a 500-pound stone. By that point, he had actually suffered an arm injury and then had to quit strongman and then started doing WWE.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. So. Wow, that's incredible. As far have you competed or done anything as far as like strongman or powerlifting or anything like that?
Yeah, I did 2 strongman competitions when I was like younger, in the sense of like just starting the gym and trying to figuring out stuff. as you can imagine, with 50 hours a week of clients and doing all the paperwork, I wasn't eating very well. So unfortunately, I got injured in both of those.
Oh,
so
no.
That was a bummer.
Oh.
I got injured in both, and then I did powerlifting. I've done a couple meets, and unfortunately, I got injured in one of those too. And I had been training on one of the days. I was training from 10 a.m. till 7 at night, straight through. Just hour after hour after hour after hour. So I maybe drank like one bottle of water. That was it. And my training partner came in at 7. So we started squatting, and I tore a hamstring muscle. So it's been self-inflicted like stupidity where I'm trying to be great at everything, and it unfortunately catches me every now and then. So, but I have competed in strongman. I have competed in powerlifting. Now I've helped clients compete in pretty much everything. But those are the two that I have personal experience with, and then I have dieted for an aesthetic competition a couple times. But just didn't like the way I looked yet, so I didn't want to get on stage yet, which is typically what I tell them not to worry about, but of course I'm going to worry about it. So but yeah, so I've done I haven't gotten on stage with that yet, but I've helped people earn pro cards. So I've been backstage with them, and I know what's all entailed with it and all that stuff. Yeah.
What does it take anyway to get to, just so people understand, like at the professional level, like you're talking about like IFBB pros, right?
Yeah. So I've helped people get like non-tested and tested pro cards.
Okay.
So yeah, it's I think out of all the sports that I've helped people do, which is pretty much everything. So it's been like aesthetic competitions, which would be like bikini, figure, wellness, physique, classic physique, bodybuilding, all that stuff. Powerlifting, and we've helped people like get top 50 totals, like elite totals, like tons of state records. So very high level in that. And then helped with CrossFit Games athletes. I've helped Olympic athletes doing like nutrition plus training plus like corrective therapy stuff we did out front, which is why we have a bunch of like BMX jerseys from the Olympics. So they gave them to us for free. So that was cool. So I've helped people and then professional athletes. So you've helped a little bit of everybody. And bodybuilding at the highest level is by far one of the most, like probably the most difficult sport.
That sounds like it,
because 24/7, everything you do matters. Like how much you sleep matters, how well you sleep matters, how much you eat, how well you eat. So it's overwhelming that every single factor matters. So that's the toughest one. And with that, I mean, literally everything you eat all day can factor into whether you're going to be your best or not. If somebody's just starting, they don't need the top end of what it takes like for somebody to be a pro. But at the pro level, I mean, you're looking at the digestion rate of every food you eat. So the digestion rate of the protein sources that you eat throughout the day, you need to know the individual digestion rate of the individual protein, but plus also if you pair that with fats, it slows down the digestion. If you have it with certain types of carbohydrates, it can slow it down or actually not influence it negatively at all. So if you want something to eat protein now and you want the protein in your bloodstream in 3 hours, there's a certain food that'll do that. Versus a food that you want to eat before you go to bed, then have the protein breaking down like the whole hours of being asleep. So 8 to 10 hours, there's a certain protein that will do that. So you have to make sure you time your nutrition correctly, so that way you have protein in your bloodstream at all times, plus you have the right amount of energy to where you're providing energy for your training, but you're not having surplus of energy at other times, so you can actually lose fat, but you don't undereat and underperform. So there's a bunch of layers to it. So yeah, very, very involved, but I love that stuff. So I definitely love all the sciencey, nerdy type things. So I like trying to perfect things that can't be perfected, which is hysterical. But I love that because it's fun to see what you're capable of. So can you put together the perfect nutrition plan? And that's different for every single person, and that's different from one person from day to day. So like I've helped people who have kids, and if their kid has, you know, a baseball event on a Saturday, you're going to be eating a lot differently than if they were in school on Friday. So if you have most of the day to yourself and you're not traveling anywhere on Friday, that's a lot different than traveling and doing, you know, sports and weather activities on the weekends. So
that is insane. I mean, I don't think people would just comprehend the level of difficulty at the pro level, particularly like you said for bodybuilding. It just in some ways is superhuman.
It takes an enormous amount of dedication, and people can do it and still have families and have kids. But it's more challenging if you have families and kids. It's still possible, but it does take attentiveness all the time.
That's crazy. Anybody so you said you trained Olympic athletes?
Yeah, I do. I do not know their names. I apologize
if
you're going to listen to this. But yeah, like I've helped like Olympic swimmers, BMX athletes, like here in Rock Hill. I think within the last 2 or 3 years, they built. Might even be longer than that, but they built a BMX track in town.
Okay.
And they had like the World Games.
Oh, wow.
The first year they had built it. And so we had athletes come in from everywhere. So the first team to give us a jersey was actually the French team. I had helped one of their athletes with, forget what the problem was, probably like a shoulder problem or hip problem. And they asked if they could pay me, and I was like, nah, don't worry about it. So they had their whole team sign a jersey, and they gave it to me, which was awesome. So I thought that was really cool. So I put it up on the wall. Well, then, of course, all the other teams were like, well, screw this. We're not going to have, the French be the only team that has a jersey over there. So they started giving me, so I have a jersey from, like, Canada, Russia, Brazil,
no freaking
Japan.
way.
Yeah, so I've been able to work with all of them in various ways when they come into town.
Wow.
So it's been really cool doing that. I worked with Olympic swimmer for nutrition, just a lot of like variety, which is really cool. So that's been a lot of fun. Yes.
Wow. Wow. I can't imagine. How did people start hearing about you? Like, it was just word of mouth, or?
It was actually one of the BMX teams, I forget which was the first one to come. They were looking for a gym in town because they came for the race, and they were in town for like a week or so. Okay. And they're like, well, we want to get a workout or two in. So they were driving looking for gyms, and right next to us is a Planet Fitness. Right. So we actually share a wall with the Planet Fitness. Oh. So they had driven past the Planet Fitness and kind of went in, looked around. It wasn't what they would have needed for sport training. So on their way out, one of the athletes happened to just look back and saw our sign that said Brutal Iron Gym, because we're on just like the side of the building. Yeah. So they're like, well, with that name, they've got to have some barbells or something. So they turned around and came in, and then since they started, they told all the other teams that we were here. So it just kind of built through word of mouth from that. So thankfully, one athlete happened to look backward one day, and it found us. Yes. And that was before, since I am like, I'm built a business, and it's all myself doing everything. Yeah. At the time, I had gotten emails from Google to verify my business, like to make sure that I could be on Google searches. Right. And there was like 4 million things I got to do, and I'm trying to like forward mail from the stupid mailbox I have to walk around like a mile to the other side of the building. So I missed like this thing that they had sent me. So at the time, I actually wasn't even registered on like Google. Oh, wow. So when they searched for gyms in town, I wouldn't have come up. Oh, goodness. so yes, good business lesson is please put yourself on Google. That'll help. But yeah, so at the time, like, so now that like I have a website, now that we show up on Google, and like we've been doing the podcast, there's a lot more recognition now. Yeah, which is awesome.
What inspired you to start that podcast anyway?
I was actually invited to be on another podcast on, I think it was Bacon, Bibles and Barbells, or some combination of that. Yeah. And they had talked to Jen Thompson, who's probably the best female powerlifter of all time. So she lives in Denver, North Carolina, and we've hosted, there's the Iron Sisters, and they do kind of like a weekend powerlifting seminar for females. Nice. And it at the time, it was her, Kimberly Wofford, Benika Law or Benika Brown, I'm not sure which her last name is now, and they would come and host it. So at the time, it was like the world's like best female deadlifter, best female bench presser, and best female squat, and they would come together and do a weekend. So through one of the athletes I was working at, Jennifer had known through that athlete that we existed, so they asked if they could do a seminar here, and I said absolutely, as long as my mom can join. Nice. So because my mom does powerlifting now, so we didn't take any fee or anything. They just got to come and do their whole camp and everything, as long as my mom got to do it. So through them, Jennifer was on that podcast, and then she mentioned me. So then they came and kind of talked to me. I thought doing a podcast was really fun, and at the time, I don't know if it's TMI, I was going through a little bit of like a kind of depressive time. Okay. Yeah. So I was really overwhelmed, stressed, really just rough time. So for me, the idea of a podcast was it's something that I could give information to the world, and it would increase my self-perception of value. So it'd make me feel better about myself. Yeah. So I was like, you know what, I could do that. Like, I love teaching, I love talking, so I'll do that. So I went ahead and kind of signed up on Podbean, and I did the first one, and then I started looking into like, okay, well, what helps a podcast grow? So one of the biggest things was frequency. So I was like, I'll just do a podcast every day. And it's now been 1,016 days, and I've done a podcast like every day. So, yeah, so it started from being on somebody else's podcast, enjoying that experience, and going from there.
Mm-hmm. Is it just you, or do you have a guest on your podcast every so often?
It's just me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm an introvert by nature, which will sound weird because I haven't shut up the whole time. I don't like being held accountable to certain schedules and things. So trying to schedule someone else to come in at the same time, it was like annoying to do every day. Mm-hmm. And then it was just easier for me to do it by myself. Yeah. And I've had a couple people on it, which I've really enjoyed. So we've had a member, Nate Questel, and him and I did a couple together, and I loved that, like bantering back and forth. But it was hard trying to get the right schedule and stuff. Yeah. My mom has actually been on it a couple of times. Yeah. And then my wife has actually joined me on a couple as well. So it's mostly me, but I do like having other people involved when it fits the subject matter and it feels like easy to schedule. Right.
That makes total sense. Mm-hmm. Gen Talk. Oh, were you at the USAPL competition? I don't remember if I saw you or not in North Carolina and Charlotte that they had. I think it was last weekend. Or do you go to any of those?
I haven't been to any recently since the pandemic. Okay. I used to go to a lot with athletes. And then with the pandemic, it was just like, can't go because you're not allowed. Yeah. And then right now, my wife is working from home, so I like trying to be with her as much as possible and share that time. We recently just got married, actually New Year's Eve in 2020. Congrats. So 2020 was awful for everyone, but we wanted to end on a good note. So we ended up getting married on New Year's Eve, and we've been enjoying kind of the newlywed time together. Yeah. So I've been helping my athletes, like virtual coaching. So they'll send me videos or we'll text all day if they have a competition. But I haven't gone to any recently.
Gotcha. No. Any meets or competitions people should know about that are, how do I say it? Like not highly publicized, but really popular either in the North or South Carolina areas that happen like on a yearly basis?
Ooh, yeah. I know like USAPL has Battle on the Border. Okay. Which is typically they'll have 2 in this local area a year. And those are almost always full immediately, but they're really fun because you got a lot of people, and you tend to have like the better athletes show up for it and stuff. Nice. So you have a mix of like people who are new, but plus some people showing off and doing some cool lifts. Sweet. So I know USPA has a lot locally. I don't know about any that are like specific ones that reoccur, but I know that they do. So like I've had a couple clients go to like one they'll do in Hickory in like August. I don't know what the name of it is, but it'll be like every year in Hickory in August, So there's definitely some consistency in those. As for like bodybuilding shows, I tend not to follow the organizations very well. So I'm very much the athlete and I will talk about doing a competition. Yeah. So I'll be like, okay, well, when do you think you'll be able to dedicate the prep time for it? And they'll tell me these months. And then we say, okay, so it looks like around, say, October, November will be good. So we'll just look for whatever their sport is. We'll look at the organizations that are local. We'll find the event, and then we'll do it. Okay. So yeah, typically then like when I have people who do like national level competitions, then of course whenever that is we have to do it. Yeah, and so I've flown out to Vegas a couple of times and helped some athletes out there with that, so that was fun. So it's been like I've gone down to Miami for a couple, so it's been fun to kind of travel around like pre-pandemic for all the bigger ones. I just haven't gotten back into the swing of doing that recently. Yeah.
Gotcha. I want to transition just a little bit and talk about gym equipment because I like that topic. Are there pieces in here that you're particularly proud of? I know obviously the belt squat that you and your dad made is pretty awesome, but or like specialty bars or pieces of equipment that you've accumulated over the years that you're like, that's pretty freaking sweet.
Yes. Sorinex is easily my favorite. So they are local to us. They're only like 50 minutes down the road. Oh, cool. Yeah. So when I first opened in 2011, they are who I got my like brand new equipment from. Mm-hmm. So I got squat racks and some barbells. Like they sent me some extra barbells and extra stuff as well. So they were amazing to me, which at the time when I was talking to the owner and like the kind of second in charge, I'd met with them in person, and at the time I think they were making like $24 million a year. So it was like for me to make an order of like $80,000 equipment was like pennies to them, but they treated me amazingly, which was really meant a lot. So I really appreciate their stuff because even 10 years later, it's like brand new. Other than a couple like chip, marks of paint, the stuff works great. So I love their stuff. Now we do have like some old school Nebula pieces, which is always good. So we have a Nebula hack squat, Nebula leg press. We have their chest supported row. Which is awesome because the handles move like in and out and they rotate. So the foot plate moves up and down. So there's a lot of kind of ways to make the equipment fit the person better. Yeah. So we have people that come in here and they'll train, they're 5 foot tall, but we also have people who are 6'6". So trying to get equipment that can cover both ends is very challenging. So we've been able to take the equipment and modify some. So some of the pieces, like we have an old Pro Maxima like power squat, we had to cut like a cross base off of it so my 5 foot clients could go low enough. So we had to cut that apart and then make that modified. We put band capabilities on our hack squat and leg press, which didn't exist when we bought them. We even did a reverse band brace for our leg press, so you can do reverse band working, which helps kind of progress people to a heavier level, heavier weight load faster. Yeah. So, and then also with the banding capabilities, like some of the sport athletes, they would like to do explosive one-legged presses, almost like a jump press. Yeah. So it's been awesome using that. So Sornex is my favorite, old school Nebula. We have some Strive pieces that I really like. So Strive has like the different 3 places you can load weight. Now it's called, I just blanked on what the name of the company is now called. Like I know Prime Fitness has like those. Yes. Maybe that's what they've updated to. Okay. Is they've like the underload, overload. So there's 3 different places to put weights, basically. Yeah. And what I love about that is we have an old school leg extension, and the best part is the seat is actually angled backward, so your hip and your knee joint are kind of at the same height. So if you sit in a leg extension where your hip and your knee, like if you're sitting like this and you go to extend weight, it automatically puts a lot of pressure on your knee. Yes. If your hip is lower and you're elevated a little bit, your knee's elevated, it lessens the pressure on the knee. So it was a much friendlier version. And then since you can change where the emphasis is, you can change it to where as soon as they start, when their knee's most expanded or most stretched, most vulnerable, you can start with the lowest weight load. Then as they would extend their leg, it would actually feel heavier and heavier and heavier. So as they get to a safer joint position, you can actually have the weight load increasing. So that way they're not limited to the weakest part of the range of motion. They can actually overload the strongest part and then underload the weakest part. So we have a bicep curl that does the same thing, so which is awesome because when you're extended, you're most at risk for injury. It's also a great position to create muscle damage, but dangerous for injury. But as you curl up, you can actually have it set up to where it gets heavier as you get closer to a contraction. So as you feel stronger, the weight actually feels heavier. So you can match what's called your strength curve, which is basically why people add bands to like squats and deadlifts and stuff, is you're trying to have the weight feel maximally challenging in all parts of the range of motion. So those Strive pieces were awesome for being able to do that. Yeah, and then we have couple other just kind of odds and ends. Like we recently got a Nautilus glute drive, which I really like for like basically hip thrusts, but without having to load a barbell up and put it back on your pad and all that stuff. So we made actually a handle for getting up out of that machine. So what was funny was when we got it, I had used one up in New Jersey and really loved the feel of it. And it has like a belt around your waist. So it's really easy setup, much easier than a barbell and stuff. And we do like some of our aesthetic clients, like glutes. You can never not train glutes. Yep. Everybody wants glutes. And guys should definitely be training their glutes. So it was a very quick and easy way for us to use that machine to do hip thrusts while supersetting other things. Whereas when you do like a barbell setup, it's kind of time to get down on there. You have to funnel around things. So with that, though, we found with our older population, they had a hard time just doing a sit-up to get up out of the machine. So we put a bar on there so they can actually pull themselves up. So a lot of the equipment, I love the basics of it, and then we just kind of add a couple little things to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would want to? Well, I know again going back to the stuff that you've made some add-ons, but is there anything that you feel is like missing from the fitness equipment space that you would like to make? That's, I don't know, somewhat innovative or different.
Mm-hmm. In a couple ways, like I have a thing saved on my phone that just titled Inventions, and it was various things that like would want to add. Some of them are ridiculous, but some of them are actually, I would hope, pretty good. But like the cable attachment we made for our Concept 2 rower, like that's something I found very beneficial, and I've actually sold some like to other places. So that was one that it was it was interesting. Like I'd sit down with a client and we're trying to do like thoracic work, but with the straight bar handle, you can't get as deep of a contraction. So I remember telling my dad, I'm like, I want something on here where we can put on like just a set of D-rings, like that have a like, long neck attachment, so people can actually pull back and like get contraction. So we figured it out. And we made that. We actually made weight loadable. Are you familiar with Body Tempering by Donnie Thompson?
I know Donnie, but I don't know Body Tempering.
So he created a concept of like essentially rolling heavy devices on you. So rather than foam rolling where you roll on something, body tempering is you take a heavy device and you roll it on yourself. So at the time I went to a clinic of his, I think it was in 2014, and I loved the concept. It was a really cool concept, especially for the hamstrings, because the hamstrings are so hard to get opened up if people have been sitting all day. So I loved it, but at the time there was no product for it. So he was getting kind of metal pipes, like big pipes and stuff from junkyards. And my dad had just recently made me a circus dumbbell for our strongman athletes. And we were looking at it one day, and I was like, if you took the end of the circus dumbbells, just got rid of the handle, and put those together, that's essentially something I could load and roll on people. Oh, yeah. So we actually made that. So we made it back in 2015. Actually, Kabuki Strength sells loadable rollers now. Oh. So, yeah. So we had that back in 2015. We made that, and we made various sizes. So we have one that fits like 10-pound plates. And then we made smaller ones for like arms and forearms and stuff that we made machined plates ourselves. So it was really cool. So we've definitely I've been lucky to kind of be on the edge, like with the industry in certain ways. So I've a company right now I'm talking with, but we have an agreement not to share information. So yes, so there's a company I'm talking with now. We share ideas and kind of collaborating towards things. So it's awesome. A very exciting opportunity, very cool things. Yeah, just can't talk about it yet. So,
that's totally fine. Well, and you having trained like actually pro athletes would know better about those kinds of movements and the things that are needed from an equipment standpoint than most other people would. Maybe even an equipment manufacturer doesn't have the background.
Yeah, so. It's interesting. I think you may have known this too. Is like since you deal with equipment, is very rarely does any one company make every piece good.
Yes.
So I don't know what happens. Like they'll have an awesome like leg extension, but their hamstring curl is crap. Or they'll have a pull down machine that feels awful. And I'm like, who sat on this and who used this? Like, why did this? So it's interesting that I do feel like companies need more opinions, and because especially with training variety of people, you train people 5 foot tall to 6'6". You train people who are 16. I have people who compete at 16 years old, and then I've trained people in the 70s and 80s. And then you train people in bodybuilding, you train people in powerlifting, you train people in, say like sport performance. So it's not hard, but people miss the boat on making equipment that can reach all of those people. And it's surprising because it's very small modifications, like a little knob here that slides this thing up and down. Yeah. And like some things can be done very easily, but people just get to they get to a point where they like the piece. They haven't talked to enough people yet, so they just start producing it and they're done. And it's just surprising. And so that's been one thing I've seen in like equipment is people will do what they do very well, but they miss the boat on expanding it. So you'll have like pendulum squats are really like big nowadays. Yep. So you'll have a manufacturer who makes a pendulum squat, but they don't have any way for people to add bands. Everybody loves to add bands on everything nowadays. So all you'd have to do is literally weld on a peg to the bottom frame, and boom, there's your band peg. They still won't do it. So people are wrapping bands around the frame. They're wrapping it around this other thing that for the most part will work. Some people don't know though, so they'll wrap the band slightly crooked. So you're unfortunately like twisting the machine. Like now it won't show up until 10 years later. But when you're a gym owner and you now have a machine that wobbles all the time, it's annoying as hell. So we bought like there's a adjustable Roman chair that I have that I bought used, and the peg, the metal plate that the peg would go in and out, from use, the holes had actually worn open. So when you get in it, it would actually rock a little bit. So I had to contact the manufacturer, get a brand new plate to put on. Then my dad and I machined a different part where like the rod goes through that you pivot around. So we got that nice and snug. So now that thing's probably 15 years old, but it has no movement at all. It works absolutely perfect as if it's brand new. And all you'd have to do is like, it was, I think, $30 in parts. And you can take something that's 15 years old and make it look brand new. So it's amazing that people don't do that as companies, like why they don't do that themselves. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I find that stuff fascinating. Well, and I like seeing the iterations of equipment too, and the build quality differences between some of the legacy equipment and some of the newer stuff. Some of the newer stuff is made really well. Some of the more newer stuff, especially on the residential side, is made absolutely horribly.
Yes.
There are exceptions, but I did want to ask you, I don't think I've ever asked anybody this before. What's your opinion on the chain-driven stuff versus the belt drive versus, say, the cables? I have yet to see, and I could be wrong, but I have yet to see a chain-driven piece break.
I was going to say durability is going to be like one of the biggest factors. So we have a chain-driven piece. Our power squat's chain-driven. Yeah. And I got that actually from a high school. And high school kids would not be kind to any piece of equipment whatsoever, of course. And they're going to load the thing up to 1,000 pounds. So we got that from them. And other than having to replace a pad, that thing has taken us beating it up for 10 years, plus whatever the athletes did before that. Wow. And it's chain driven. So literally, like, if the chain were to break, you just go to a bike shop and you buy a chain and put it back on. Wow. Whereas we've had, like, one of our Strive pieces, we had a tricep extension. Mm-hmm. Someone in the gym didn't know exactly how to use it correctly. They did, but they weren't. So they were using it to stand in front of it to do mimic dips. And they had it loaded up way heavier, I think like 500 pounds. Because leverages was set up to where it was in the lifter's favor. So they just kept adding plates till it felt heavy. So it was like 500 pounds on a belt. Like that was like essentially like those like rubber belt things. Yeah. So what happened was it actually slid out from the thing that was pinching the end. It was so heavy it pulled out. So that member is no longer a member because they knew they were doing something wrong. So we had to fix that, but you'll see that where in a chain, the chain may have held up fine or it might have snapped, but much easier to fix. Yeah. Where with that, we had to get a whole new belt. I had to go through and remake the piece because it bent a piece of metal. So durability, chain driven is definitely going to last longer. And cables are actually pretty easy, but depending on where the cable's coated or not. So we have a cable tower from Sorinex, and it has 2 pulleys. And it's set up to where, if you use one pulley, it's half the weight. If you use both pulleys, it's full weight. Okay. And for it to be able to do that, they have to use a lot of little pulley things. So you have 2 different cables, but it's I think it's 8 little pulley wheels on it. So due to having to go through so many pulleys, when we get a coated cable, there's not enough eccentric load. So you pull it and it almost doesn't even want to go back. Yeah. Because it has to go through all those small little pulleys. Some of the pulleys are only 3 inches. Oh, so we found if we got an uncoated cable, that the eccentric was better. So we just now get a bare steel cable. But over time, that pulls and shreds and breaks. And then as it does that, it'll wear away at the plastic of the pulley. So we found with cable stuff, if you have to get a bare cable, you have to replace pulleys more often. So there is more durability issues with things other than the chain-driven. Chain-driven seems to just work forever. Yeah. So, yeah.
I love that. And that seems to be consistent with the stuff that I've gotten. So I was just curious from a general owner's perspective what the differences were. What I wanted to ask is, since you're pretty into the nutrition side of things, are there any high-level tips that you can give for beginners who are just starting out with resistance training? I like to ask people who've got that kind of background that you would get that most people miss on when they're just starting.
The funny answer is most people miss on exactly what they should do, and they look for all the small details. So people will worry about whether they're having brown rice versus white rice, but they won't know their calorie content. They won't have a clue how much protein they're eating. And so in regards to what's most impactful in terms of results, whether it's fat loss, whether it's sport performance, whether it's building muscle, most impactful is going to be calories because it determines kind of the direction of your weight change. Yeah. So if I eat ice cream all day, but I eat less calories than I need, I will lose weight. Sure. I might not feel good all day and the weight's going to look like crap, but I will lose weight. Whereas if I eat healthy food, organic everything, but I overeat my calories, I will get fat. I will gain body fat, even if it's all healthy food. So calories it's not like calories matters and nothing else does. It's just calorie matters more. So calories is the first thing I would have people kind of track in a way. So we have some people that'll use like a fitness tracking app like MyFitnessPal or something like that. Or they'll do a volume control where we'll say, okay, anytime you have meat, have 3 to 5 ounces. I'm just making up numbers. And if they're super hungry at that meal, they would have 5. If they are not that hungry, they only have 3, but they have to eat the meal. So you give them like ranges of food. So for carbohydrates, you can have any carbohydrate as long as you have a cup to a cup and a half. So whether it's mashed potatoes, whether it's sweet potato, whether it's rice, if they do a cup to a cup and a half, that's a volume control. So in a sense, you're controlling their portions, which in then turn controls their calories. So it depends on if somebody's brand new, any degree of control is better than what they are probably doing. So you're just trying to get them in a ballpark of calories. And if you get that streamlined to at least some consistency, say right now, one day they're eating 1,000, next day they're eating 5,000, the following day they're eating 3,000, you're just trying to normalize that to a smaller window. Within that, while doing that, you then teach them protein and what the importance of protein is, the benefits of it, and then how much protein they need. And there are various ranges for various people, but in general, is 0.6 to 1 gram per pound of body weight is pretty good protein intake. Okay. So if I weigh 150 pounds, let's do the math a little easier for me. So if the person weighs 200 pounds, they would eat 60% of that, which would be, 120 pounds? Yeah. 120 grams. So they'd eat 120 grams up to 200 grams of protein a day. Okay. Now, for some people, they're not paying attention at all, so they might only be at 60. Yeah. I'm not going to tell them all of a sudden to go to 120. That's going to be miserable. So you just try to walk them up to it. But usually if they're 0.6 to 1 gram, that's plenty good enough. So even my advanced athletes who are training, 6-7 days a week, you still don't need much more than 1 gram per pound of body weight. I've done diets where I've done 2 grams per pound of body weight, and I did that for sustained months. And what I found was there was no change of body composition in a positive way. I was actually just tired all the time because there wasn't enough caloric allowance for carbohydrates and fats. Right. So I had to actually bring my protein down, give myself more carbs and fats, and actually looked leaner. I felt better. I performed better because I wasn't using up all my calories for protein. Okay. So, and then you'll also just have different digestive stress, and it just too much protein is as bad almost as not enough protein. Mm-hmm. So getting protein consistent is good. And then the third thing we do is meal timing. So people always say, like, how many meals a day should I have? Whatever you can be consistent with. Yeah. So if you eat like a jerk now and you eat whatever the heck you feel like eating all the time, so some days it's 1 meal, next days it's 7 because you're super hungry, the next day it's 3. We just try to normalize that some. And if their schedule allows 3 meals, then we have 3 meals. If their schedule allows 4, we do 4. If it allows 5, we do 5. In general, more meals allows you more times that you can modify what you're doing throughout the day. So typically I have clients try to get to 5 times they would eat in a day. So it's typically going to be breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then like something between breakfast and lunch, something between lunch and dinner. What you're trying to do is reverse them from eating everything at night and nothing during the day, which is what everyone does. Everybody says they're too busy to eat. It's like, oh, okay. So you try to get them to eat more during the day, less at night. And then every single time you eat, you're ingesting calories, which then represents at that moment a surplus. So you have little micro surpluses and micro deficits all day. So when people think of calories, they unfortunately only think of it as 24 hours. But every minute of the day you're using calories. So depending on your activity level of this hour versus the next hour, you might need more food now, less food later. And that better balances your output versus input. So you can better control body fat. So you can actually allow people to eat more food while controlling body fat and a leaner body weight. So it's timing, those things are more important. So all of that is more important whether they have brown rice or white rice. Yeah. And that's where everyone starts, is they all start with eating better foods, but they don't pay attention to calories, they don't pay attention to protein, they don't pay attention to meal frequency effects. Yep. Yeah. So those are definitely the first places. So on our daily podcast, every time I talk about nutrition, literally probably every 4 podcasts is a nutrition one. Probably every single nutrition podcast, I reiterate that. So we have podcasts that I always send them back to. So like podcast 153 is how many calories do I need? Podcast 33 is how much protein do I need? So we have podcasts that I just reference them back to all the time. But those are by far the 3 most impactful components, which would be calories, protein content, and meal frequency. If you can get those things right, the what of what you eat matters very little. It actually more so just individual preference and digestive ease throughout the day. So if I did have ice cream all day, I'm going to have big highs and lows of energy.
Okay.
So you're going to have energy now because the ice cream digests now, but then in an hour and a half, you're going to be like, holy crap, I'm really hungry. So what you eat kind of determines how you feel, whereas the calories, the protein, and the meal frequency actually determines the way you look, the way you perform, so the bigger concepts.
Gotcha. And it's probably, and depending on if you're training, you want the faster digesting calories and that kind of thing.
Sometimes sugar is actually the best thing you can eat because you want to have, if I've just got off work and I haven't eaten in 4 or 5 hours and I'm about to go to the gym, drinking some Gatorade is a great idea because it's going to give you energy right now that you can use in your workout.
Right.
But I have people tell me all the time, I can't have sugar, it's going to make me fat. And I'm like, no, it won't. Mm-hmm. Too much sugar makes you fat, sure. Too much of anything makes you fat.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot simpler than people want to make it, and also, somewhat more complicated too if you're going advanced. I'm sure like you said, with bodybuilding, it's a totally different game depending on the hour of the day.
Yes, you're playing the same game of modifying calories, protein, meal timing, and what you eat, like the macronutrient quality.
Yep.
But now more things matter.
Yeah.
So I've helped people lose weight eating at McDonald's every day.
Nice.
So there was one example. I remember a guy. He had 2 kids that had special needs, and he was a single parent, and it was just overwhelming for him. So he'd get up in the morning. He would try to do 30 minutes of a rower at home, and then once the kids were awake, he had to kind of take care of them. He had somebody help watch them as he would drive to work. He would then he would work through his lunch hour, and then he would eat on the way back home. So then by the time he was home, he could give his kids all of his attention. Oh. So it was easier for him to eat fast food on the way to work, eat fast food at work, eat fast food on the way home.
Wow.
And he's like, I don't have time to cook and prep because I'm just really busy. Yeah. So I told him, I said, hey, that's fine. Here's the McDonald's menu. Let's figure out what we can eat on this that gets you healthier. He lost 30 pounds, reduced his blood pressure, got super healthy, and he was still able to eat fast food. So can a bodybuilder do that? Yeah. No. But can somebody who's just wanting to get better health? Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah. I just did an article for some news source online about that, and that was one of the first things I mentioned is you can have McDonald's, you can eat what you want, but you've got to be honest about tracking what you're putting in your body.
Absolutely.
And that's what most people miss is, like you're saying, if it's about calories in, calories out, meal timing and that kind of thing, you can predict, but you have to know what's going in first.
Yes.
Yeah. Like a cup is a cup, and but most people are doing 2, 3, and 4 cups. But they don't. Because they're not putting on a scale or anything, they have no idea what they're consuming.
Yeah, it's very easy, and we're all this way, myself included, but we all like to lie to ourselves. We like to make ourselves out better than we are. Oh, yeah. Just human nature. Yeah. So, if you ask somebody, one of the funny things is when you do a nutrition consultation with somebody, and you'll say, well, what's your normal foods? Mm-hmm. They'll tell you something that looks like somebody pre-contest diet for a bodybuilder, and I'm like, I know you're not eating this, But in their mind, they don't want to be judged. They're afraid that I'm going to say negative things to them. And I understand that part of the interaction of it. But at the same time is they also have that kind of truth in their head of this is what I want to tell people. This is what I want to believe about myself. So I feel better about myself. Yeah. But the more we can scrape that away and get to the reality, it might hurt to know what we're doing because we know it's we're making mistakes or we're choosing the wrong thing, voluntarily choosing wrong things, which we know doesn't feel good to do. We don't want to admit that. But the more we can admit, the more truth we can get, the more then we can modify and make changes. So if somebody's just lying to you about their food, I've actually had somebody send me their diet. I sent them back to it and I said, follow this for a week. And then they present it to me as if this is what they normally did. I know they didn't do that. So I said, go ahead and follow this for a week. I want you to honestly try this. And I went through and told them, I have a eating disorder background. I was anorexic for a couple of years when I was younger. Oh, wow. And I've gone through everything under the sun I did a diet one time where I lost 50 pounds in 8 weeks just to see if I could do it. But I freaked out, drove to Food Lion and ate an entire half gallon of chocolate marshmallow ice cream in the parking lot because I just couldn't handle it. Yeah. So I've made every mistake that they've made, so I definitely never want to come at somebody judging them. Yeah. I've been exactly where they've been. So I told them a little bit about myself, and I said, if this is what you believe to be healthy food, please try this. Just try it for a week and let me know, and then I'll help you make this work. And they did, and all of a sudden they lost a lot of weight, and they were feeling better. So it was something that they wanted to be true of themselves. So I was like, well, then let's make it true. Yeah. Let's work with that. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but getting people to be more honest whether it's nutrition, whether it's training, whether it's just anything outside of the gym, it's always going to be a better way to live life. Yeah.
For sure. Going back to a little bit to the business side of things, and just do you have any I'll ask this two ways. Do you have any horror stories of things that have happened in the gym that are just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe? And then on the bright side, do you have any really cool success stories, either from athletes you trained or like business things that have happened either here in the gym or outside?
Yeah, the horror stories are definitely like, unfortunately, there are some. Yeah, you'd have people who come in and just act like idiots. So I had one guy. He meant well. I went home for one of the earlier years of owning the business. I would never, if I ever missed a day of being here, it was really random. And my parents still lived in Pennsylvania at the time, so I would go up to visit them. Yeah. So I would go home for maybe like 3 days over Thanksgiving. And one time when I was gone, a member, before I had left, one of our toilets, the men's toilet, you have to hold the lever down for 3 seconds for it to do its thing. If you just kind of tap it, it doesn't really work. Yeah. Well, he had told me he was a plumber and he could fix it. And I was like, please don't do that. Like, I can take care of it. That's not what I want you doing. So, but thank you very much. So while I was gone, he took the initiative to change it. So unfortunately, what he did was when he thought he fixed it, he left the flap completely up and the chain had fallen into the pipe. So for however long I was gone, whenever he did that, water was just running straight through the toilet the entire time. So my water bill was not very nice that month. So when I came back, like I had seen it where somebody had told me about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? So I looked on our cameras. We have a camera system because it's a 24-hour gym, and I saw that he had gone in there and fixed it. So I asked him when he came back in, I said, hey, I was pretty clear I didn't want you doing that, so I really don't appreciate you doing that, so unfortunately we're going to have to cancel your membership. Well, he told me to go bleep myself, and it was not very fun. He asked me to go out in the parking lot and fight him and stuff, and it was just interesting. So we've had times like that. So we had another guy I had to kick out, and on his way out he flipped over the trash can that's outside, and unfortunately he forgot his keys in the gym. So he got out to his truck, realized he forgot his keys, had to walk back in, and I was standing by the door. So I opened the door, I handed him keys, and then he just, like, nobody said anything. But then as he walked past the trash can, he tried to pick it back up, got embarrassed, and then left. So he had, so it's been quite a few things that have happened that way. But the good stuff is definitely what makes you keep coming. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and like my favorite stories are the stories where people have been in pain or they thought a level of fitness was beyond their capacity. And when you get them coming in here, you can get rid of pain. So we had one guy, he hurt his back doing wakeboarding when he was in his 20s. And I forget exactly what he did to his back, but a doctor at the time, I think he was in his late 20s, and the doctor told him that exercise was not good. It would hurt his back and he shouldn't exercise. So by 47 years old, he had gotten, belly, he was overweight, and he saw himself in a picture and said that he really hated to see photos of himself, and he finally wanted to change it. So I was training somebody at the time. He came into the gym, and I said, "Oh, you looking to join?" He said, "I am fat. I'm out of shape. I'm weak. I need somebody to fix me." And I was like, "Geez, I whiz. Okay." So I was like, I feel bad for you." So we started working. He got to a point where he had no back pain, and he deadlifted 500 pounds on his 50 years old. No way. Yeah. So, and it's like those are the stories that matter the most, is when you can see somebody who feels trapped in life, whether, like, I help people with eating disorders, so we have a connection with a local therapist who will send people who, if she believes that exercise will help and nutrition education will help, so I'll work with them, and to see some of them now, like years later, they're out in the world living healthy, happy life, and you can just see that they're healthy now. Like they have better, you can see it in their face when somebody has eating disorder, especially bulimia, and especially very bad levels. So just seeing that is like by far the best things. So those are the ones that kind of make me the most motivated. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, I can imagine and you said you've been training people for how long was it again?
So 18 years old. I've been paid to train people. Okay. So I trained people before that, but not for money, so I don't count it. Yeah. So at 18 I used to travel with a set of power blocks. Oh yeah. In the back seat, in the back of the truck of my car. So I'd have like a mat and power blocks, and I would drive to people's houses and train them. And so that was like the start of my personal training career. So I'm 37 now. So I've been doing it for 19 years now.
Yeah. What motivated you to start training at 18?
I actually started on my 15th birthday at school. I was kind of like short, chubby, and I was play fighting with a friend. And we were just kind of like picking on each other. And he made the comment of, at least I'm not fat.
Ooh.
And I was like, well, dang, like, I didn't like that. I didn't like that was true. I was like, I didn't really, if you had asked me if I was overweight, I probably would have said yes. But I never had somebody like throw it back at me.
Yeah.
So I got mad at myself because I didn't like that I had allowed something to be true of me that I wouldn't have wanted somebody to say. So it wasn't his fault for saying it. It was my fault for being it. So I was like, well, I hate this. I'm not letting this go. So it was my 15th birthday. And on that day, I decided to do 250 push-ups and 250 sit-ups every day. And I thought that would help. Now, at the time, I knew nothing. So I thought push-ups was going to build my chest. I didn't know you needed food. I just thought the act of exercising built a muscle. But somehow, at the same time, I thought crunches would help me lose fat on my belly without thinking that would build my abs. So I have no clue what the hell I was thinking. This is just one of those things when you're like younger teenager, you don't have a clue what you don't know. So I thought push-ups would build my chest. I thought sit-ups would lose my belly. But at the time, I couldn't even do 20 push-ups in a row. Like it hurt me to try to get 15 to 16. And I set the goal of 250 every day. So from my 15th birthday to my 16th birthday, I only missed 10 days. So yes, I did it, and I would stay up till 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning if I had to, and get up back at 7 and go to school. And I was able to do it every day except for 10. 7 of those I was on a Boy Scout trip. So I was in Boy Scouts and Eagle Scout, and I was on a hiking trip, and I was too embarrassed to do it in front of my friends. So I missed 7 days like because of that. So getting closer to my 16th birthday, my parents knew that I was like interested in fitness, and I talked about wanting to get a weight set. So we lived in the middle of nowhere, so there was really no gyms around. Like you'd have to drive like 40 minutes to get to a gym. So they agreed to let me use half of our garage. We have a 2-car garage. So I would park my car outside, and which was miserable in the winter in Pennsylvania, but it worked. So I put a carpet, got a weight set, and the weight set at the time was a bench that would do like slight decline, flat, and incline. It had a leg extension, leg curl on the end of it. And then the uprights, you could use the backside to do squats off of.
Cool.
And then they had an attachment you could do dips. So and plus it was 300 pounds of plates in a barbell. So I think it was like $600 in total. So it was my birthday, Christmas, Easter, next birthday, next Christmas gift. So it was awesome. My parents did that for me. So I started lifting, and at the time, I could get Muscle and Fitness. I think it was Muscle and Fitness magazines, then Muscular Development magazines came out. So when my mom would go to Walmart to do shopping, we used to have a daycare in our home. So I would go with my mom, and we'd do shopping, and it would be like quite a trip because she would have to buy a lot for the daycare kids as well. So I would get those magazines every month. And within the first night, I'd have them entirely read. But I would try to do any exercises, any workouts I could find in there. And then when I was 17, we got internet. So I'm so old that we didn't have internet when I was younger. So when I was 17, we got internet at the house. It was dial-up internet. Yes.
I remember.
Yes. So I remember watching RX Muscle in the Iron Asylum, and it was interviews by Dave Palumbo with professional bodybuilders. So I would come home. It was a 20-minute video, but it would take 2 hours to download. And then if anybody called the house, I'd hang up on them immediately. So I felt bad. looking back at it now, no one got to call our house for like the 2 hours after I got home from school. Even if it was like my mom's daycare, I was just hanging up on people the whole time so I could get that video downloaded. So I would download it, I would watch it, and then I'd go to the basement and try to do whatever I could of that workout. So I'd just try to do every day, every time they downloaded something, I would watch that and try to mimic it. And then I got Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding and started doing everything out of that. So what happened was I started learning more, and then if I was lifting for like a sports team, like we were lifting for football, our coach would, at the time, our coach was not actively involved. So he would open the door to the weight room, and then I don't know what he did after that. So we had no program, so I used to just do stuff based on what I'd learned. Well, my friends were like, well, what are you doing? So they started joining me, and I started showing them things. So I started really loving showing other people. And my genetics were crap. So when I first started lifting, I was like 5'8", 165, and you could grab like fat rolls. I had no muscle definition at all. So in conjunction with the 250 push-ups and 250 sit-ups, I didn't eat. I ate one meal a day when my parents could see me at dinner. But other than that, I didn't eat anything because I thought it would help me lose fat faster. So I ended up at 18 years old being 6 foot tall, still 165, and you could still grab fat rolls around me. So I was probably maybe 135 in like lean physique at 6 foot tall. So I was very, very, very thin. So when I would show my friends, they would get bigger muscles and they would look better. And I'm like, this sucks. Like, like, dang it. So I'm showing them and they're getting all the good results. I'm getting nothing. So that kind of sparked my interest in nutrition, because I realized it wasn't training that was a problem. Like from 16 to 18 years old, if I missed a single workout, I'd have been surprised. I worked out every single day because I was a very addictive personality. So, I mean, one time, like when I was 18, so in order to change from eating nothing, I read an article by Lee Priest, who was a bodybuilder from Australia, and he said the best way for young people to grow would be to eat a whole chicken, whole loaf of bread, and a gallon of milk every day. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get a chicken every day, and like I thought bread would just make me fat. So I was like, I like the milk, and I don't like to eat. So I was like, I'll just drink a gallon of milk every day. Yeah, so I drank a gallon of milk every single day for 2 years. Didn't miss a single day for 2 years. I drank a gallon of milk. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sugar in milk, so I got fat. so I went from 165 fat to like 190 fatter. So that was a bummer, and it took a long time to take that off. But it let me go from when I graduated high school, I felt very like thin in clothes, and I didn't like the way I looked.
Yeah.
So the prospect of going to college and meeting all new people, that was very overwhelming. If I didn't like the way I looked, they're not going to like me, So it's kind of one of those connections you make. Yep. So I was like, well, if I can't be lean, at least I can be big. Yeah. So that's why I started drinking a gallon of milk every day. Nice. So I started trying to gain weight, even if it looked like crap. At least it filled out a T-shirt. So, and it was something where I never took my shirt off. Like when I'd go swimming with friends or families, I would always have my shirt on in the swimming pool. And it was something I was very self-conscious about. So it was then like around 1920, I started learning enough about food to start leaning out a little bit. And then it was in my kind of early 20s to mid 20s, I started making more sense to me. So I've, in a sense, like now I weigh 275 and I'm actually leaner at 275 than I was at 165. Wow. So I have a lower body fat percentage now than I did back then. That's crazy. Yeah, and it's just from continuing to learn and experiment over time. Yeah, so long-winded answer, but that's how I got into it, was basically just driven by self-hate and just years of trying to crush myself into something better. So I've worked really hard to transition now to where, like if I look in the mirror now, there's things I want to fix, but I am very proud of the changes I have made. But that took a long time. That took a long time to be able to change that mindset of like my physical looks is my worth. Right. And it was a long time to kind of fix that. And then I had like other complications where like I'm blind in my left eye. Oh, no way. And it was from birth. And I was always nervous that I would look cross-eyed. Yeah. So for a lot of years, I didn't look people in the face. Like I'd always look down or I'd try to shy away from meeting people. So there's a lot of things to overcome that physical fitness helped me do that. So physical training helped me emotionally and mentally way more than I ever did physically. Yeah. So that's why I connect to those stories when you're saying like the good stories that motivate me. Yeah. And it is those stories of people who are thinking like they're going to be in pain forever or they're going to be overweight forever, or, anytime you can make an emotional mental change with somebody, that's why it fires me up so much, is because that's what it did for me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you about your podcast. So on what episodes can people go to if they're just learning about starting to learn about nutrition and they want to get either lean or gain more weight? Yeah,
podcast 41 is titled Diet Right, What Matters Most. Okay. And it talks about the order of what matters most. Okay. So podcast 41 is the best one. Podcast 153 then covers how many calories you need. Mm-hmm. Podcast 33 covers protein. Okay. And then in those ones, it'll tell you kind of where to go next. But those will be the first three that I would send anybody to if they want to learn about nutrition. Mm-hmm. And you and I talked about this before we started filming, but those were back before I got a better microphone. Yep. So the sound quality is you can hear it and you can understand it, but it's definitely muffled because I'm just talking into my laptop. Sure. So there has since been new microphones and they sound better now, but those ones are still good enough content and you can still hear them that I still want them available to people. Awesome. But those would be definitely the first ones to check out. 41, 153, then 33.
Gotcha. Yeah. Have you thought about transcribing those so people could actually read what you were saying?
I had a lady reach out. Like, I've been fortunate that the podcast has grown.
Yeah.
So actually, we have 20% of listeners from outside the United States.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. We've reached all 50 states with the podcast over the years. So it's been fun, and it's helped me have clientele like all across the United States and other places. Like I have clients in Austria, Spain, like England, stuff like that. So it's really cool. So it's reached out a little everywhere. So I had a lady from Spain reach out and offer to do that, and I haven't kind of followed up with her yet because I wasn't sure what the process was, but it's at that stage now where like people have requested it. So she thought it was awesome because she speaks and understands English, but she was trying to share some of the information with her family, and they didn't. So she's like, would you mind if I would, convert this over to Spanish so I can show them? Okay. And I was like, yeah, I don't care, go for it, Wow. And but I do realize that there would probably be, if I could do that as a service, that would probably be better than making people do it on their own. Sure. Yeah. So that would be something that would be pretty cool to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or even just translate it right back into English, so people like if you don't like the sound quality, you could just read the.
That's true. You can just read the transcript. Yeah.
You're saying that's awesome.
So it's been pretty cool. Yeah.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So where can people find you, and where can people find the gym?
Okay. So the website www.brutalirongym.com would be kind of the most basic place to go. Mm-hmm. I will admit that I do not update it that much because it's through WordPress, and I'm frustrated by how WordPress works.
I'm in the same boat, man.
It doesn't work the way I want it to.
Yep.
So it's all on me. I got to learn that better. But that is going to give somebody the basics. They're going to see a little bit about the gym, see pictures of clients, see the different type of services we have. But Instagram, I try to post on the most. It's the format that makes sense to me. It flows easier every day, so I'm not spending so much time on it. So Instagram would be the first place to check out for social media. Whatever from Instagram shares to Facebook and Twitter, I do that, but it doesn't always share videos for whatever reasons. So I am on Facebook and Twitter, but it doesn't have the most up-to-date stuff. And then we have a YouTube channel that I'll post stuff every now and then when I get to it. So with the podcast, training clients, and like doing online client work, I pick and choose what I want to be good at. So Instagram is something I choose to do well every day, as well as the podcast. So the podcast, we should be on every podcast platform. It's all under the name Brutal Iron Gym. So actually, funny enough, my wife and I, we just installed Apple TV at home, our home office. Mm-hmm. And just for fun, I just looked myself up on Apple Podcast. So it was kind of cool just to see like the icon. I was like, hey, I'm on here. So it's pretty fun. But that would be, the website would be good basic information, www.brutalirongym.com. And then you can find us on our podcast, any podcast platform under the name Brutal Iron Gym, and Instagram under the name Brutal Iron Gym. Yes.
Well, definitely go and listen to this guy's information. Refer to those podcast episodes if you guys are interested in the nutrition aspect. You have an awesome background for all of that. And if you're in Rock Hill, South Carolina, check out Brutal Iron Gym. Come and hang out with this guy and see what it's all about. The equipment in the facility is amazing. It's like you said, it's got something for everybody. So you guys really need to see what he's got going on. But I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. I genuinely appreciate the opportunity. It's really fun getting to talk and getting to share information that might help people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anytime. Well, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be catching up soon, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Please give FreedomCast a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean a lot to our business. Plus, it's fun to read y'all's reviews. See you next time.